The snow on planet Keltnin shimmered like crushed diamonds under the pale twin suns. It was a harsh world, cold, silent, and unforgiving. Most life here survived through strength, technology, or the unbreakable bonds of family. That was why the tiny kitten should not have survived. She was no larger than a human hand, her fur a patchwork of white and ash gray, clinging to warmth that no longer existed. Her mother's body lay frozen beneath a broken supply pod, one of the many human refugee vessels that never made it safely to the colony zones. The kitten mewed softly, a sound so weak it barely disturbed the frozen air, and that sound saved her life. Not far away, 3 alien cubs trudged through the snow, their thick blue and silver fur puffed out against the cold. They were young, barely adolescents by their species standards, but already burdened with a responsibility far beyond their years. The Varelian cubs were siblings, and they, too, were orphans. Strapped to the eldest cub's back was a thermal cradle containing 2 infant Varelians, their baby siblings. The cradle flickered, its power cell nearly exhausted. The eldest Koro spoke, his voice strained but steady. "We need shelter." Luma, the middle cub, clutched a scanner that showed nothing but empty wasteland. "And food," she added. The youngest, Tick, whispered, her eyes wide with fear and hope. Then they heard it, a sound so small, so fragile, it almost vanished into the biting wind. Mr. Koro stopped in his tracks. "Did you hear that?" They followed the sound to the wreckage of the human pod and found the kitten. At first, Luma hesitated. "It's a predator species." "Maybe." The kitten hissed weakly, trying to look fierce, though her tiny legs trembled with cold and fear. But Tick saw something else. She knelt immediately, her voice soft. "She's just a baby, like them." She nodded toward the infant siblings on Koro's back. The scanner beeped again, its low-energy warnings screaming silently from the display. The cold was closing in, and they were out of time. Koro made a decision that would change everything. "Back her," he commanded. And just like that, an orphaned human kitten joined an orphaned alien family, stranded in the middle of a frozen, desolate world. The storm hit that night with a vengeance. Blinding winds battered their makeshift shelter, carved into ice and the twisted metal of the wreckage. Inside, the thermal cradle flickered dangerously, its light a dying pulse in the dark. The infants began to cry, their distress a sharp counterpoint to the howling gale. But then, something incredible happened. The kitten, barely alive just hours earlier, crawled instinctively toward the alien infants. She pressed her tiny body against the cradle's opening, curling close, sharing what little warmth she had. And the babies stopped crying. Their heart rates stabilized. The thermal readings on the cradle actually rose, not from technology, but from the simple, profound warmth of life. Luma stared in disbelief. "She's helping them." Koro said nothing, but his grip tightened on his tool blade. He had promised their parents, who died during a pirate raid, that he would protect the little ones. Now, it seemed, so had the kitten. Days bled into weeks. Survival became a routine. The cubs hunted small, resilient frost creatures, their instincts sharpened by desperation. The kitten learned to follow them, her tiny steps growing stronger, her eyes sharper. She wasn't a burden. She was a partner. When predators came, massive ice-scaled stalkers drawn by the sounds of the infants, the kitten was always the first to warn them. Her back would arch, her fur would stand on end, and a scream would tear from her small body, piercing the snowy silence. She was small, but she was brave. One terrifying afternoon, a stalker lunged too close to their shelter. Before Koro could even react, the kitten launched herself through the air, a tiny ball of fury, straight at its face. Her claws flashed. It wasn't enough to kill the massive beast, not even close. But it was enough to distract it. Enough for Koro to find an opening and strike. Enough for the babies to survive another day. She was their little guardian, their first line of defense. By the time a human Varelian Joint Rescue Patrol finally found them, they expected to find corpses. They were prepared for the worst. What they found instead stunned them into silence. There, In the lee of the broken pod stood 3 weary alien cubs, standing protectively over a shelter. Inside, 2 healthy Varelian infants slept peacefully, and on top of the thermal cradle sat 1 kitten. Her fur scarred and thin, but her posture proud, like a guardian statue watching over her most precious treasure. A human medic whispered, in a voice full of awe, "She's bonded." A Varelian officer standing beside him replied, "With all of them." As the rescuers approached, the kitten hissed, a low growl rumbling in her chest. She would not let anyone near the babies. Koro, understanding her fiercely protective nature, placed a gentle hand on her head. "It's okay," he said softly. "They're not here to take us apart." The kitten relaxed, but she did not move away from her charges. The official records later showed something that scientists would debate for decades. The kitten's constant presence had reduced the infant's stress hormones by nearly 47%. It improved their immune response and enhanced their emotional stability in the harshest environment imaginable. It was a biological miracle. Scientists debated it endlessly, but soldiers, parents, and survivors people who knew what it meant to fight for family, they understood it immediately. Family wasn't about species or biology. It was about choice. It was about who you stood with when the world fell apart. Years later, on a warm, sun-drenched, mixed-world colony, a group of children gathered near a sunlit window. Inside, a large, old cat lay sleeping. Her fur now mostly gray, her body relaxed in the comforting warmth. Around her, several grown Varelians sat, along with their own young children. Tick, no longer a frightened cub, told the little ones. She saved us, Luma, now a respected engineer. Added, she raised us. She was no longer orphaned. She was no longer small. She was family. She was home. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story of courage and connection, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more tales from across the galaxy. We'll see you next time.